friend Dan Schultz, West Point grad, attorney, entrepreneur out in Arizona. Dan, thanks for joining me, my friend.
Hey, Todd. Thanks for having me. I'm actually now living in Wisconsin full-time, but I go back to Arizona every year to visit my kids and stuff. So
are you involved in a lot of the? Are you involved in a lot of the stuff with Eric Hovde and all the team up there in Arizona trying to like right the ship? Not Arizona, Wisconsin.
Yeah, absolutely. I joined the local county committee. Like our county fair was this past weekend, so I went up to our booth that we had. There was a competing Democrat booth. I'm also a member of the American Legion, so I stopped by their booth. And we've got a good group here. I'm in a very red rural county, so it's population is about 20,000, and Trump carried it like with about 65% of the popular vote. So it's a good place to be. But I keep telling them we've got to still build our organization, because when it comes to the presidential election, we should have, not like 70% turnout of Republicans. We should have 95% plus to offset what's going on in Milwaukee and Madison and Kenosha and Racine and the other larger cities, which tend to vote blue instead of red. So I'm definitely involved here.
I wanted to get you on because, you and I were talking about Precinct Project before, but, I was on the Miami-Dade, I've said this before, executive committee for the Republican Party, and I faced complete tyranny and mafia tactics and literal, I would call it criminal behavior, but I'm not a prosecutor, when you don't, allow the democratic process to proceed. So how do people deal with that? I mean, are you seeing this in other states?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's all explained at my website, precinctstrategy.com. And of course, I wrote a little book about it, and I learned it all in 7th grade civics. But the bottom line is this. Politics, especially party politics, is a pure numbers game. So if you come to your local committee and it's being run by rhinos, it's being run by rhinos because they're not really Republicans. They're fakes. They're Democrats in Republican sheep's clothing, and they've got a majority. That's why they're the officers. What you've got to do is you've got to strategize outside that organization. You've got to build up a group that can outnumber them, and then you've all got to go and populate month after month after month and lay low at first. I tell people, it's at my website, don't go to your first meeting wearing your Trump gear. Don't go in there telling them that they're all rhinos and you're going to change them. You've got to go in and basically say, I'm a good Republican and I always vote Republican, and I want to help Republicans get elected. And then you start bringing all of your cohorts. And then eventually, when you outnumber them and they see the writing on the wall, they'll quit. That happens almost every time they get outnumbered. I saw it happen in Georgia, in Arizona, all across the country. When you have a critical mass that outnumbers the rhinos who are running things or want to run things, they'll take their ball and go home. And that's the goal. And so there's a big power vacuum everywhere. And then the other thing that you have to do is you've got to read and study the rules of the road, the bylaws, or what maybe it's called the Constitution and rules of procedure, like I know you guys have in Florida. And they can change those. And they did change those recently, I know. And they said, okay, if you're a member of the Florida Republican Assembly, because it's got Republican in the name, or the Republican Liberty Caucus, it's got Republican, and we don't like that. We don't want you to. If you're a member of that, you're out. And it's in their documents. But nobody was reading and studying that stuff. And then you also got to learn Robert's Rules of Order, so that when they're at the meeting and they're making motions to do things that are out of order, you've got to be able to raise your hand and say, point of order, what you're doing, I don't think is allowed in the bylaws, and then point them to the bylaws and show them. And then if the parliamentarian says, yeah, but I rule that we can do it anyways, then you got to know how to, get to, make a motion to have the body overrule the chair because he's violating the bylaws. But most of the people that get recruited, they just, oh wow, I'm a precinct committeeman now, and I can walk on water, and I'm doing all this great. You got to do the homework, and a lot of them aren't doing the homework. And still, I mean, I just looked up Maricopa County because it's easy to look up. The numbers for Maricopa County. The 62% of Republicans live in Maricopa County, Arizona. And online every month, the Maricopa County Elections Department posts the spreadsheet of how all the precinct committeemen by party and by legislative district, by precinct, and how many vacancies there are in each precinct and how many are filled. And they're going backwards. They only filled 50% in the 2024 July 30 primary. Now they're down to 48%. Texas is the same way. I've got a graphic that shows, a guy on a soapbox, Muslims, 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 yelling and screaming about why doesn't the legislature and the governor do something about the Muslims? Well, the Muslims, they're doing politics.
Yeah.
They're doing it. Standing on your soapbox and yelling and screaming doesn't change the Texas legislature. You got to elect better Texas legislators. Well, when you've only got 45% of your precinct chair, they call them precinct chairs in Texas, filled, it's unlikely that they're going to even take notice of you. They know the people who are in office, the rhinos who are in office, they know how disorganized we are, how we're not united politically. And they're not afraid of losing their primary. Lindsey Graham's not afraid of losing his primary in South Carolina. John Cornyn's not afraid of losing his, and he's already been endorsed by Trump. John Cornyn's not afraid. I asked Grok, I knew what the answer was, but I wanted to see what Grok said. Take a look at 50 years of history with the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate and incumbents who run for re-election. What percentage of them win? It's 96% plus.
Yeah.
And then, but why? Because 80% of Republicans don't vote in the primaries. That's the problem. But if you can boost turnout in the primary with precinct committeemen and other volunteers for a challenger, they won't even see you coming if you do it the right way, like I did for my buddy Frank Schmuck, who's now in Florida. We took out an incumbent rhino in the Arizona Senate in 2016 and won in a landslide, 53-47. The incumbent rhino, Jeff Dial, he didn't even see us coming. But we stealthily boosted turnout. But it takes grunt work, and it takes some, a very little bit of organizing. And then you've got to target in each precinct, cut your precincts up into sectors like I did. And then you boost turnout. And you got to do it in the general too. Like my precinct, we had in Arizona in 2020, we had over 90% of Republicans go vote. And they called it the most important election in our lifetime. 28% though in the average precinct of Republicans didn't vote. 28%. Over a quarter didn't vote. And that's why Trump lost, quote unquote, but he wouldn't have lost, quote unquote, via those machines if we'd have been smarter and all voted on election day instead of early, because then 80% of the people voted early. Early voting is really stupid when they're using machines. You should vote on election day. But you got to boost turnout. You got to boost turnout. They couldn't have stolen it if 30 or 40% of the precincts instead of just 10% had 90% plus. But I'm not optimistic that we're going to win anything in 2026. I'm not going to. I'm basically going dark.
Yeah, interesting.
And I'm just going to prepare for the coming bad times, because if Raheem Kassam nailed it early on in 2021, I think it was, when I was on Bannon's War Room, and I got, I think they only had like 2 hours on a Saturday morning, and maybe I was in the first hour, and Bannon asked Raheem, hey, you got any parting thoughts before we end for today? I think it was on a Saturday, and he said, yeah, or maybe it was a Friday. Yeah, I want to go back to what Dan said. I think he nailed it. And I'm paraphrasing.
Mm-hmm.
If if we don't change the current crop of Republicans we have in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, if we don't start defeating those people in the primaries where you can really do it like he explained, then that means the uniparty is going to continue. This one-party state that we have, this thing we call the uniparty, rhinos plus Democrats, is going to continue. And if that continues, eventually we're just going to be living under socialism because they're not going to change anything. So I think Dan nailed it. And then Bannon shook his head and then wanted to talk about something else, some holiday or something in England or something. And then they went to the break. But I've said this many times. Raheem got it. He really understood it. And then he came to Arizona thereafter, and I think he talked at a America Fest thing or something at the Dream City Church, and he talked about that. He said, "Yeah, Dan was on the program, and he said this, that, and the other thing. And I think Dan's right." And blah blah blah. But I don't see any surge in participation nationwide at all. And so I think the midterms are going to be a disaster for us. Even if we keep the House and we keep the Senate with people with R's after their name, they're still going to be stabbing Trump in the back, and more so. They're slow walking everything. Thune is slow walking everything in the Senate. Johnson is slow walking everything in the House on purpose. They're waiting Trump out. And who's ever advising Trump, they've got to be rhinos. Well, we know Susie Wiles is. We know Vasavita is. And, almost all of them around Trump. He doesn't get any good advice, unfortunately. And I wish it wasn't so, but it seems to be the case. And I'm not optimistic about what's going to happen after 2026. And what I'm doing is I'm watching the primaries. I'm going to start, I'm watching in states.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, a family-owned and operated investment advisory practice. I'm a certified portfolio manager, and my job is to help you make better decisions with your money. One of the things we try to avoid is investing in companies that push the woke agenda. If you're invested with one of the big firms out there, there's a pretty good chance that you're feeding the beast that hates your values. Our company is 100% conservative, and we'd love to have an opportunity to work with you. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big, proud American Eagle logo.
Like, is there any surge of PCs? In some states, you can get the numbers easily because they're public, because it's a primary state. But in caucus states like North Carolina, the only people who know how many people are in the party are the party chairs, the county chairs, and the state chair. And so I'm going to be watching that. March 6th is the North Carolina primary, and Michael Whatley is running, and I don't know if anybody's running against him. If I predict Michael Whatley is going to run away with it, and he's going to be the nominee. And he's a rhino. He's running the RNC. Why doesn't he have on the RNC's website the precinct committeeman strategy or anything about becoming a precinct committeeman? The reason is because they don't want people to become precinct committeemen.
Exactly. In Georgia, he's been pretty seditious in like supporting McCoon, who is being supported by a family who just ran a $140 million Ponzi scheme against conservatives, and they're still in power in Georgia. I mean, it's literally unbelievable. I think part of the problem, Dan, is there was a surge because of you, and then people got hurt in the local areas, and they just said, screw it. But that's not the right reaction. They have to stay with the game,
right?
Yeah.
So I have a good friend in Illinois who was on the verge of quitting. I'm not going to say what her name is, but she's well known. She's been on Bannon's War Room. She's a county chair. She's doing great things. But now the rhinos are attacking her, and a mutual friend told me the other day, well, she's thinking about quitting. And I said, and she used to be in the Army. And I said, I was in the Army. She was in the Army. She's thinking about quitting. She's doing exactly what they want her to do.
Yeah. Well, one of the reactions I get a lot,
You just
yeah, people say, well, why doesn't somebody do something? And I'm like, dude, why don't you do something? So,
yeah.
what are you going to go down to Miami? Ed Vidal wants you down there for a meeting. Did he tell you that?
Somebody asked me on the recent Steve Stern call in the chat about going down and explaining to people how to win the primaries. And I don't like to travel. So no, I'm not going to go down to Miami, but I'll definitely do it by Zoom.
Yeah.
I just think these days look at what we're doing right now with StreamYard, and this internet connection, and my internet connection isn't real good, but I mean, what if we were going to do this in studio together? Well, I'd have to travel for a day and then travel for a day coming back. And with the tech, we've got to get better using the technology,
Sure.
We're getting better at it, and we got to get better at using AI. I'm using Grok now all the time to ask questions that confirm that, like, is it better for a guy like Elon Musk to start a third party or to try to take over the Republican Party? That's a no-brainer. It's easier to take over the Republican Party. That's a better thing. And Grok agrees with me. So if we could get Musk to bury the hatchet with Trump and then Trumplify and Muskify our party and bring it to 100% strength, we could throw out all of the rhinos. And I keep saying, the precinct strategy is nothing more than what the Constitution teaches us. The preamble says, we, the people, ordain and establish this Constitution. The Constitution tells us every 2 years we can throw out every House member, 1/3 of the senators. That's it. That's the precinct. Why don't we do it? Well, because we have turnout of 20% on average in Republican primaries. That's why. Complacency. We got to break the cycle of apathy and complacency. We got to light a fire on the rear end of the American people, and I just don't see it happening yet. I guess things have to get really bad before Americans are going to do something, and I don't want it to get really bad. I want to stave that off, but that seems to be the American.
You would think that the last 4 years prior to Trump would have been really bad, but because next time it's going to be even worse. They're going to put us in jail.
Yeah.
In Florida, you had a situation where people did, like you said, they took over the Rex, and then the Republican Party of Florida literally canceled the committees in certain counties because they didn't want those people involved. How do you deal with that?
Well, here okay, so let's say it's done. They've canceled it, and there's no recourse. What you do is you regroup outside the party. So, for example, Robert Beadle's built for us this communications and collaboration platform that you can access through precinctstrategy.com. You can sign up and get on it. All the Floridians in any given county who are America Firsters who got canned from the party could set up a chat room, public or private, on this platform, and they could every day be chatting. I know they're using Signal or they're using Telegram, but to me, those platforms, number one, they can pull the plug on you anytime. Number two, they're just not set up, as far as I can tell, to be as effective as this simple platform that Beatles built for us, where you can set up any kind of chat room you want, public or private, anytime. You can invite people in. You can share documents. I've set up all sorts of chat rooms on it for like precinct committeeman recruitment. There's a default for Florida. I want to say there's over 1,000 Floridians on the platform already, but they're not using it like they should be. But you've got to build a caucus somehow where you're all communicating with one another and building your outside group. And then, in Florida, every 4 years, maybe it's 2 in some counties, but I think it's 4 everywhere. You can run for precinct committeeman. They can't stop that. They can't stop, because by statute, you get to be on the primary election ballot. And then the people who get the most votes, and usually you win by default, That's when we can take them out. See, a way to gauge a state's political party, there's a couple of ways about the corruption built into it, like Florida. Well, you've got like 3 documents that you got to know backwards and forwards all the time: the Constitution of the state party, your county constitution or bylaws, and then those rules of procedure. They make it as complicated as possible. And then how often can you have turnover? Well, through the election process, because in every state, at some point, you have to get elected. You can get elected, and they can't stop that. Well, it's every 4 years. The less corrupt states have just one document, like Arizona, very simple set of bylaws, and every 2 years they can have complete turnover everywhere. But in Florida, it's every 4 years. So I know Florida, is a bad place to be. Pennsylvania is very similar to Florida. In Pennsylvania, if you run in the primary and a county chair allows you to speak at that county committee meeting, that county committee can be dissolved. Just like, that's a reason to dissolve a committee and strip the county chair's power from him. It's in their bylaws. Because they don't want anybody challenging an incumbent Republican. You're not allowed to speak at any Republican function. And if you are allowed, then the state party chair can come down on you like a ton of bricks. That's corruption.
Yeah.
So what do you do if you're in Pennsylvania? You got to build a group, an outside group, like Andy Meacham in Bucks County has Bucks First or something like that. First for Bucks or something like that. An outside group that doesn't have the word Republican in the name, so that doesn't run afoul of that problem. And then they're building and building and building that. And now they are in charge of Bucks County. The conservatives are in charge of Bucks County. So you just got to get self-organized. And we're Americans. We ought to be able to figure this stuff out. But yeah. First, there's got to be a will to, there's an old saying, if there's a will, there's a way. Well, we don't even have the will to do it. And until that happens, all bets are off.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Dan?
I can hear you. I noticed your microphone had gone off, and now I can't see you.
I've got a plug-in issue here.
Okay.
Dan, anything else you want to get out while we got you?
Well, yeah. I mean, we the people are going to save the Republic in 2026 by defeating all of the incumbent rhinos, or as many as possible, or we're not. And it doesn't look like we're going to. And I hope that changes. And I will be monitoring the situation, and I'll help anybody who contacts me. But I'm not going to put myself out there anymore. I've got other things I want to do that are more important, because I feel like I'm, I hate to use this term, but I'm pissing into the wind.
Yeah.
I'm getting wet, and it ain't good, because I give free advice. The Precinct Committeeman strategy is free advice. It's basic American civics in action. The problem is people don't follow free advice. And my book was my paperback was deplatformed by Amazon. They won't sell the paperback. They won't tell me why. You can get the digital version still, or the Audible version, but they're giving me a runaround on that. So I might write a new book, see if I can do it that way. But the bottom line is this:
put you in touch with our publishing team if you want.
What's that? Okay, but the bottom line is this: I'm supremely confident that the American people can fix what's going on in this country peacefully through the ballot box. I just don't believe that they're going to, and that saddens me. And I'm preparing for the worst. I hope for the best. I pray for the best. My mantra is pray, recruit precinct committeemen, repeat. Pray, recruit, repeat. And I think prayer is the most important. I think that's why we got Trump back into the White House. But now we've got to take action, and we can't just squeak by every time, because in 2020 he lost. In 2016, he squeaked by. He said it was a landslide. It wasn't. In 2024, we won in a landslide. It wasn't a landslide. He squeaked by. We should have had 85, 90 million people voting for him, not 77 million. And so, will we save the republic together? We can, but looks like we're not going to. So like I said, I'm not optimistic. So I'm sorry to be so negative, but I just call balls and strikes.
Well, truth is truth, and if you're up for it, we
Yeah.
can have you back on a regular basis just to talk about this into 26 if you'd like. But
yeah, anytime. And like you and I spoke, I've sort of suspended my podcast. I may rethink that, but that frees up a lot of time from my day to get other things done. So in the same vein, but different, so thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Dan, thank you for your time. We'll have you back down the road. Appreciate it. Take care.
All right, Todd, thanks.